Hi, everyone, and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Alice, and I'm a customer success manager at iSpring, and I will be the moderator for today's session. As a presenter, we've invited an iSpring user and instructional designer, David Barras-Baker. Hi, David. How are you today?
Great, thank you.
Great. I'm super excited for today's webinar because David will be sharing his experience with us. He will talk about advanced PowerPoint techniques and also demonstrate some tricks on building interactive course with iSpring Suite.
Well, as Alice said, everybody, good morning and welcome. This is my iSpring journey of success, tips, traps, and techniques that I've learned and applied through this particular journey. We've divided this up into a few sections. This introduction will take about 5 minutes, some points on design for about 8 minutes, some tips and tricks in PowerPoint for another 20 minutes, and then another 20 minutes talking about iSpring tips and tricks. So to give you a bit of a background, I started in instructional design in 1984, and that's a long time ago, so I'm giving my age away. It was in the aviation industry, and to give you some perspective, that was before the internet. So the technology at the time had some unique challenges. That's not me in the picture, but that was the terminal we used at the time, an old Viking terminal, which was about, I think it was 512 by 512 resolution, monochrome, but it had a touch screen. And you could choose any background color as long as it was black, and you could choose any foreground color as long as it was green. And that is how it all started. And of course, technology just got better and better. And here we are today. So I've designed and developed courseware across the world. I've had design and development houses in 3 different countries. But more recently, I was with Dimension Data, which became NTT about 6 years ago. We had a development team which used to do all our development, and all our instructional designers would design in PowerPoint. But due to cost cuts, etc., that development team was done away with, and we had to find a way of producing our own e-learning. So I researched the market to find out how we could convert our designs on PowerPoint directly into SCORM, and after reviewing various products, iSpring was the clear winner. About a year ago, further cuts had the entire L&D team retrenched, and I had to decide what I was going to do after that. So I decided on a business model where I developed a website called fixmyskills.com, also using iSpring, obviously, and the business model was to monetize intellectual property rights of really well-known experts, create the online courseware, and split the proceeds with the SME. So my very first project was one on finance, which was sort of 90% of the financial curriculum of an MBA. And in order to achieve that, I needed to create a commercial online learning platform, and I needed to design and develop 32 creating value modules. So looking at that timeline, it took each module was about 30 minutes long at a push. You could probably do them in about 15 minutes, but I budgeted 30 minutes for each as interactive time, just in case there were reviews and retests, etc. It took me 3 months to build the platform, and the last 9 months of the year to design and develop the 32 modules. So if you take that 9 months, it's 270 days. So you work it out about 8.5 days per module. So those of you who might be interested in the development time. I needed e-commerce, I needed a learning management system, something that would upload and play SCORM or XAPI or Tin Can. And of course, the tick for the SCORM API and Tin Can was iSpring. Already quite experienced with WordPress, so WordPress was what I used. After doing some research, I found on various third-party LMSs, I settled on Lifter. It ticked all the boxes and it was reasonably affordable. And then I needed a SCORM embedder, which I found, which is another plugin which supports iSpring or any system really that embeds SCORM or XAPI. iSpring again was right there. There were some security challenges where I had information in folders which were not protected. So this is a really good site, Mini Orange, supplied me with a tool to be able to exclude access to folders that were to exclude from people who are not signed in. So that was a huge plus. So eventually it all became bulletproof. Anyway, just as a reminder, as Alice said, just if you have any questions, just put them in the question box and we'll deal with them at the end. And we'll now move on to the design phase. It's a little bit out of sequence, but on the design, I just wanted to quickly mention something called Chekhovs Gun. Some of you may have heard of Chekhovs Gun, but I'll repeat it for those who don't know. So Chekhov was a Russian playwright, and he was critiquing a play done by one of his colleagues, and on the stage setting was a lounge, and on two hooks on the wall there was a gun, which intrigued him. And he got more and more disappointed when he noticed that the gun wasn't going to be used at all in the plot, and it built that anticipation. And the main principle called Chekhov's Gun is don't ever have anything on your screen that is unnecessary. So it just causes clutter, it causes wrong anticipation from learners, and you detract from what you're trying to achieve. So you can go and look it up on Wikipedia for a full article on Chekhov's Gun. I think you'll find it quite illuminating. Also on timing, we are in micro-learning mode. This has been pushed for a long time. Research has shown that it's difficult for people to concentrate optimally for longer than 13 minutes. One of my lessons learned that my modules were an average of 20 minutes, so I unfortunately broke that rule myself, so I need to be more careful in future. But micro-learning is certainly the trend today. Next, I want to talk about terminology. Get your terminology consistent. There are so many words used or terms used for the same thing. So are you designing courseware for learners, students, or participants? Pick one and stick to it so that there's consistency. And are you offering training, learning, or instruction? Again, pick one and stick to it. And what are you producing? Are they courses, sessions, lessons, or modules? However you structure it, just set those standards, decide on the terminology you're going to use and stick to it. It's very confusing to a learner if you talk about a lesson and then later you talk about a module, or you talk about instruction and later training, and so on. The same applies to the last one. You talk about a quiz, an assessment, or a knowledge check. Once again, choose the right consistency and apply it right throughout. Again, with that consistency is standardization, where you create your perfect prototype. And I'm going to come back to that because that's really, really, really important. Plan your module structure. Look at your fonts and colors. Just because there are 1,000 fonts and 1,000 colors doesn't mean you have to use them all. If you have certain shapes to indicate and communicate certain things, stick to them. You know, clip art and characters, choose the way you're going to use that, and don't mix and match photos with clip art and or characters. Be consistent in your prompts. Press next to continue, click next to continue, decide what it's going to be, and set that standard. Also, when it comes to the transitions, just because there are a dozen transitions doesn't mean you need to use them all. Pick the ones that work best for the type of screen, and it applies as well, obviously, to menus and animations. The reason why it's great to double check and triple check your prototype is that you're going to be using that to copy and paste in your modules. So one tiny little error is going to be absolutely disastrous, because once you start replicating and you discover the error later, you've got a lot to go back and fix. Another thing that I did was I created a file called a design PowerPoint, because a lot of reusable elements are in there. And this is an example of what I did. So this lady is used extensively. So I like to put shadows on what I do. So that's all there, ready to be copy and pasted into whatever I wanted to do. Some well-used animations, and so on. So this just gives you the general idea of elements that are used and reused. You put them in a library so that you can copy and paste. You don't have to redevelop consistently. And again, any questions, please just put them in the question box, and we'll handle that afterwards. And moving on to PowerPoint, the first thing is we're talking about size and quality settings, a hugely important issue. Under your design, you can go to your slide size, and you can actually custom set the slide size to suit your end result. You don't have to feel that you have to go with any defaults. Also, as an aside, you can, instead of using centimeters, you can put in px for pixels, and will convert it. So if your frame of reference is pixels, use pixels. And while we're here, this is a really important lesson learned, is for your quality. Under options, go to advanced. This is right at the beginning, before you even save your first prototype. Do not compress images in file. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but that by default is usually off. And every time you save your PowerPoint, your images get fuzzier and fuzzier and fuzzier. So if you want to maintain a nice crisp image right from the beginning, do not compress. Turn off compression. Something that I also like to do and have noticed through decades is that the standard shadow application in all software, even Windows, when they first came out, applied this. The light always comes from top left. So when you're using a shadow, the shadow will form bottom right. Now, it's a subtle shadow, but I use that consistently with all my elements, and it just lifts it a little bit and makes it look a lot better. I'll go back to the previous screen. There it is without the shadow, and there it is with the shadow. Also cropping. So something that was a lesson learned is that I would crop images unnecessarily. So there it's unnecessary. I've discovered that it's actually not necessary, because whatever goes beyond the line doesn't show in PowerPoint anyway. And in fact, it also comes up with a slight negative, which I'll show you here. Is here we have our cropped images. And if we're using a morph transition, look at those shadows that creep in. I'll do it again. Just during the morph transition, there's a horrible block and shadow around that. Whereas this way, they are full length, not cropped at all. And during the transition, there was no ugly shadow. So don't worry about extra bits and pieces hanging off the edge. It's okay. Again, let's talk about consistency. We've just shown the morphing, but I will go and show you some more, because it's really powerful. And I should actually say that this particular morph transition is really, really powerful and effective, but is only available on the version of PowerPoint that comes with Office 365. So if you don't have that particular version of PowerPoint, you probably won't have the morph transition, but fingers crossed you do, because it's really, really handy. So I think we've just really demonstrated that, but let me have a look here. Right, so I'm going to go zoom out a little bit and show you on this this is the final outcome of what I'm wanting to achieve on this particular example. But what I've done is I've taken those 4 figures and on the previous screen, rotated them and put them outside of the viewport or outside of the screen. And I tell you what, there's a really, this journey has been great because the term thinking outside the square is really relevant. Also, this smaller image here is a table, but I didn't want a table to be, sometimes there's a challenge in reducing the size of the table because the fonts don't change and so on. So all you do is take a snapshot of it using your snipping tool and then skillfully hide that behind. And there I've actually put it upside down. So then after that, we have an example of different characters at different lengths and shapes. So I'll show you what it actually looks like. So there we have the standard screen, and there we have the characters coming in, and I'll page up to do it in reverse. And again. And to add something further, this, when it is placed into the SCORM file and is part of an iSpring lesson, works perfectly. I have not discovered anything that I didn't do in PowerPoint that didn't work perfectly in the SCORM file. Now, you just cannot achieve effects like that with any other transition other than the morph transition. Even shapes, where we've got that blue shape, we can change the shape and the color. Right. So there was the snipping tool, which I did briefly cover, but we'll have a look at that again. Anything that you're wanting to achieve, where you want a smaller version of it on the next screen, you might want to repeat this image here. For the sake of consistency, you want to keep it on the screen as a frame of reference and then leave space to add something. The easiest thing to do is simply to take a snapshot of that and put it in there. And, you know, to demonstrate how that works, there we have it, and there we have it moving down and the small one in the corner. Just another one of those little tricks learned. Okay, animation up next. Now, animation, which I'm going to demonstrate it to you as well, is not to be used, well, this is my opinion, is not to be used unless it's necessary. And if it enhances the proving of a point, then let's do it. What I've done consistently through here is I've used these coins as bullet points. I've used these blue boxes around all my formula. I have flowcharts and also a graph. But we can bring that to life with some well-appointed animation, and it looks like that. So I'm sure you'll agree that that presentation is a lot more effective than simply looking at the final product. And here, the flow of the chart is really critical to understanding the movement of the calculation. And I split it in two, so I went halfway. I had a click next to continue, and then did the second half, just to give the learner time to absorb the complexity of the first lot. So, audio. Now, last week we did an experiment, Alice and I, and unfortunately, audio that I created a demonstration, you can't hear as participants on this. So I have created a video which Alice will play, which will show you so that you can appreciate the audio. Alice will show you that. If you can run that video now, Alice, that would be great. This is a quick video recording just so that we can record the system sounds to benefit the demonstration. So what this is Speech Hello. It's a text-to-speech app, which is really very effective and not too expensive. You have a whole variety of voices. I upgraded it so that I have access to the pro voices. Some of them are standard only, some of them are AI. In the text that you put in here that's converted to MP3, you can add in commas and exclamation marks and so on, and delays.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but I don't hear the audio there, Alice.
So to be quick and efficient, I have prepared these 4 little clips, each one with a different voice. And I'll start at the bottom so that you can hear what they sound like.
Hi, I'm Samantha. No, I'm Samantha. They are both lying. I'm Samantha.
Oh, I give up. Click next to continue.
And once you're happy with them, you click on download and save them into a folder and just name them whatever you want to. This is what I like to call thinking outside the square, because all you do is you select the audios that you saved from Speech Hello, and you simply drag them and drop them straight into the outside area. You don't need to go to your audio bar or anything like that. This is really, really simple. And we simply use the animation pane to edit everything. And all the audio clips fall into the animation pane. And there you have each speech bubble is, actually that one's wrong. So we do a start with previous so that we combine the speech bubble with the audio so that they are completely in sync. And to demonstrate that, I'll demonstrate it directly here from the animation pane.
Hi, I'm Samantha. No, I'm Samantha. They are both lying. I'm Samantha.
Oh, I give up. Click next to continue.
And there you have it.
It just occurred to me that we might not have completed the animation demo. Apologies if you didn't hear the audio. We really tried to make that happen. I don't know that we looked at the final one. And a point that I should make at this time is also consistently I use a style where I use transparent PNG files. So you'll notice there's no cropped images at all. I find it's heavy on your real estate area, and it just looks like, I think it's a good, effective way of using images. Okay, I think we're making good time. There we did the Speech Hello demo. Speech Hello is an online text to MP3 tool. It's really quite effective. You can save your audio clips, just drag them straight into PowerPoint and manage them through your animation panel, animation pane, and the voices are really quite realistic. There we go. Thinking outside the box, as I've mentioned before, and inserting the audio. So I will just go back to that demonstration screen to show you what I was talking about there. So the audio is pasted outside of your normal viewing panel. And you just drag and drop that straight using your file manager, and you don't have to worry about using an audio bar at the top there. You simply use your animation pane to manage it. And as long as what I do to keep it together is these come up one after the other, is the audio clip and the speech bubble are flagged to
play with previous, so that as the speech bubble comes up, the audio plays. And that will be seen clearly in the video. Then working with Excel and tables. So because this was a business training, a lot of tables and so on were used. And I found myself drawing tables and it took a lot of time. So what I eventually discovered, which was really useful, was preparing anything in an Excel table was really quite useful, because you can simply select what you want to, and you can go into your screen and you can paste it, and it forms a table straight away, and you can just go in and modify it the way you want to. Or you could even, if you had a pre-prepared layout, you can paste into it, and there you go. Under your table design, you can play with the borders, and under the layout, you can, sorry, back to table design, there you can put your header row on and off, and select the banding on and off. And under the layout, you can customize your margins. And so on. So I found that pretty useful, so I thought I'd share that as well. And of course, it works the other way too. If you ever wanted to paste from a table within PowerPoint, it'll paste nicely into Excel as well, although I can't quite imagine why you would do that. Then the next thing was creating interactive elements. Now, from an instructional design perspective, I'm always sensitive to, even although it's micro-learning, for things being an electronic page turner. So to try and make it a little bit more interactive is to ask a training question, which stimulates thought. And by fixing the slide properties, getting the prompts sorted out, and giving constructive feedback, you can pose a question and lead the learners through that. And I will show you first in PowerPoint how I did that, and then I will show you what the finished product looked like. So creating interactive events. Here we introduce a set of figures, and we ask the learner 4 questions. So which of these do you think has the higher activity? And the prompt simply changes to click on aircraft manufacturer or supermarket. And this is a comparison right through the series of training, where you look at financial dynamic, and to illustrate the extremes, where you've got a fast-moving consumer goods situation like in a supermarket, compared to a slow-moving but highly capital-intensive environment. And looking at the contrast between the two actually shows you the effect of these various financial dimensions. So you pose a question, and you have a correct feedback and an incorrect feedback. So depending on back to the question, you go to slide 35, and then that one you go to slide 34. Now, what you don't want to do is go through the wrong feedback if you've got it right. And this is very carefully handled with iSpring, which I will get to. And then the same, you copy and paste the same process for question 2 and question 3. So you've got a question, and then the following 2 slides is the right or the wrong feedback. Also, if the learner decides to go back, they don't want to go back through the various sets of feedback. They want to go back to the actual question itself. So in that instance, this is your friend, is slide properties. I do your iSpring, and slide 33 is our first one. So you set the branching to none, which disables the forward and back. And then if you get to this one, which is 34, which is the correct feedback, If you press back, it will take you back to 33. If you press forward, it will take you to 36. Now, this doesn't need to look onerous. It's actually quite simple and logical. And once you get used to it, you'll find that this entire slide properties panel is really your friend. It does wonders for you in bringing some life and magic into your lesson. So bear with me a second, and I will show you what that looks like in reality. So this is my website, and the menus on the side there. We will now go to interactive events, and to make it easier, I'll click on full screen, and there's the first question. So you'll see that your previous and next buttons are disabled, and the prompt is click aircraft manufacturer or supermarket. And we click supermarket, and it says that's right. And now we can continue. If I go previous, it simply takes us back to the beginning of the question, and we choose again. We choose aircraft manufacturer, that's wrong. And of course, there's a voice feedback with them all. Move to the next question. Got that wrong, and so on. I think you get the picture, and it's nice, I think, and effective in a tutorial or lesson to bring in an interactive element like this without necessarily having to branch out into a quiz. So if you're scratching your head for ways to create an interactive event within your lesson, that's an idea and a way to perhaps do that. And we're really doing well on time. And the last session is talking about iSpring in particular. This is an example of one of my lessons under creating value. And this is a consistent structure that I give my lesson. So there's a welcome, an overview, a statement of the objectives, the core concepts of the topic, obviously, some examples, a summary, and then a knowledge check. And that core structure is what I use for every single module for consistency's sake. But what the point that I'm getting to here is that each one of these screens is similar in style, and those are the section breaks. And of course, that then becomes the menu. So if we go back to the example PowerPoint, here I have used something that stands out, something that's different, but consistent, different from the body, but consistent in its look and feel, so that those become your menus. Slide properties we've covered. Just to go back to that. So under your iSpring tab, we have your slide properties. And something that I didn't mention earlier is that the only slides that are not hidden are the ones that form your menu. The rest of them are all hidden, and you can either hide them here or you can hide them within PowerPoint. Something that I discovered was sometimes, and then you indent the slides that follow from that particular section. Also, what I do is on those particular at those particular menu points, the back button will take you, instead if you don't want to move backwards through there, so the back button I've consistently had it go back to the previous section, and then you can move forward through it again. I have found in some instances, and I'm not sure why, is that sometimes it doesn't move on to the next slide straight away. So to encourage it, I do just remind from the menu point what the next slide number is. And that problem seemed to go away, but that's not a biggie. And then the player settings. So the player settings, there are so many of them, and you can really, and quite flexible. Again, huge tick and a star to iSpring, because I found I could achieve exactly what I wanted to. So under the player, you can literally configure everything you want to. So let's start with the general layout. I managed to customize the colors. I could put in my logo, and going back to what we spoke about right at the beginning was finding a size for your presentation that fits into what the final product is going to look like. Now there's a top bar, a side bar, a bottom bar, and I didn't use them all. Because I use audio, I've included the audio on-off button here, but I'll go in and just have a look. So this is the top bar configuration. We've got the copyright, resources, which is very dim lit there now, but any links to support documentation or workbooks and so on per lesson can be found there, and anything that you might have put in the comment section of your PowerPoint slide will fit into notes, and these will be enabled if you have something to show. That's on the notes. So there are marker tools, presenter info, and outline, none of which I've used when it comes to the top bar. The bottom bar, there's, if you're going to be using a lot of video, there's a play pause button or say a lengthy audio. And I didn't find that necessary because I was just using very short clips. But there is a previous and a next button, which you could also disable if you didn't want to use them and you wanted to use something else. A volume control, because we do have the audio, and the full screen button, which is takes up full screen, which is useful. And then that was about it. Under pages, playback and navigation, I set it on always resume as being consistent. The navigation type is free in any order. You can go backwards or forwards, but again, you've got the option to limit those, and I've not enabled keyboard navigation. The colors, you can set a particular color scheme that suits your branding, and I've called this FMS, which is Fix My Skills, and text labels. Also consistent here, you can click previous and next, or you can change those to something else if you don't like that. I have also changed quiz to knowledge check because that's what I prefer. So the bottom line is it's flexible and you can do what you want to. Again, it's great that that fits in with your prototype, because when you want to copy and paste that prototype to create further modules, all this is only done once. Menu consistency we've spoken about, and the navigation options we've spoken about. That was in the player settings. And then it comes to publishing. So you hit the publish button. Once you're happy, and it's going to create a zip file, which you then, which is your SCORM content, and that will be imported into your SCORM player or LMS. So the player is universal, full modified, that we've already covered, but you can access it there again. And the size is fit to browser window. So there are various options there. You can go to use the original size and so on. I need for it to still look good, even if it's maximized to full screen. So to fit to browser window was a good option. Quality, I customized the settings there. Lossless PNG only, because I did not want to lose any quality on the images. And although I didn't use video, but I used audio, I set the compression to high quality. It's so difficult, so easy to lose quality on audio, and by putting that on the highest possible quality, you will improve it. I was worried at the beginning that by bringing high quality, it might be slow to load, but they're such small and short clips that it actually had absolutely no degrading effect at all. And the LMS profile, this is really good. You're going to go SCORM Experience API, which is X API, TinCan. It's all same words for exactly the same thing. I've tried both on my site, and I have to tell you that I didn't see any specific difference between the two. Although reading up on some technical notes, the Experience API is supposed to be better than SCORM, but I personally found no difference. So you press publish, and that will create a zip file which you can then import into your LMS. So quizzes. I have to say that this is probably where I've been really slack. I could have made my quizzes a little more appealing by bringing a lot more imagery in, and I didn't. I was in a rush and I just didn't do it. But what I did learn from this, which is really good, is I used this fill in the blanks as a question option, and I found it really good, where you could, in a way, have 3 different inputs into one question. And what was particularly nice with this is looking at the answer options. But this is a lesson learned, which I came up in review, so I thought I would share it with you. So the answer is 630,000. But you cannot penalize a learner if they put 630 space 000 or a $sign in front, or a $sign in front and a space. So what's really good with this handling is you can put in the 4 alternatives that would all be quite correct. So that was worth sharing. Other than that, that's probably the primary lesson learned in the quiz generator. And finally, lessons learned. So to summarize, the cropping was something that's unnecessary to keep it within the box. The prompts, I think my prompts are not good. They're functional, but they don't look good. I would do it differently. The quizzes, we just covered that. Giving the correct answer options to make sure that that anything that is acceptable is accommodated. Double check your standards, because before you start duplicating, you must make sure that that's okay. Spend longer on your prototype. Spend longer on your prototype. Because that is the gold standard for moving forward. Also, get colleagues and learners to critique that prototype and then look at it again. If I did that, I wouldn't have created 32 modules with prompts that I'm unhappy with. So these are lessons learned. And that brings us to questions. And yep, on behalf of Fix My Skills and iSpring, thank you very much for your time. Just a disclaimer, there may be some of you on this call that already know these things or might find better ways of doing it. This is simply a reflection of what my journey over the last year has been, and it was great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for such a great presentation. So I think we can take a look at our questions. The first question from Tracy. Tracy is asking, what was the program used for audio conversion? Sorry.
It's called Speechello, one word, SPEECHELLO. I think I'll go back to that slide. Speechello or Speechello. I hope that answers your question.
And I also would like to add that we are going to release text to speech feature as well in iSpring Suite. We cannot tell you the timeframes here, but this is going to be released as well. Okay, so let's take a look at another question. Callum is asking, do you find using these characters, avatars, is more effective in engaging a learner than not using them at all?
I think from an instructional design perspective, you go back to Chekhovs Gun and don't put in anything at all unless it is conducive to the learning experience. So minimalism is really important, and consistency is important. Anything that doesn't help is a distraction. So yes, I do think so. I've taken the approach of being consistent with the avatar, if you want to call it that, by using the same person over again. Otherwise, if you change the character, unless your particular story has a change in character, I think that consistency is important. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, David. Let's take a look at another question. The question is from Mary. Mary is asking, can you copy a slide and action from one file to another?
Yes, you can. So to be clear on that, that's why I created the deck called Design, the Design PowerPoint, so that all the elements that I use consistently across all the modules are there, so I don't have to recreate them. So even if there's animation or audio attached to that particular animation, by copying that slide from my sketchpad, if you can call it that, the design.ppts, and pasting it within another one, the functionality and everything is great. Also, just in case you're worried, when you're using the slide properties and the way it branches, by inserting slides in there, it doesn't change. It accommodates the addition of new slides. So you don't have to go back and fix all your branching again. It will take care of that.
Kirsty is asking, what is the benefit of hiding most of the slides?
So the slides, you have to hide the slides that you don't want to form part of the menu. If you unhid all your slides, then every single slide in your deck will show in the menu banner on the right-hand side. That's the way iSpring handles it. So the only slides that form the menu are the unhidden slides.
Okay, thank you. John is asking, can you track the results of the quiz for each student?
Yes, the answer is yes, you can, but in this particular instance, I didn't.
So I also want to add that, yeah, with iSpring Suite, you can set it up so the quiz results will be sent to your email address or to the student's email, but also if you can track if you publish it on your LMS. So the LMS will give you the result then.
Correct. In this instance, the approach that I took here was that this was not an assessment. It wasn't a gotcha. It was just a knowledge check to check your understanding. I set the bar at 100% so that learners could go through the process of checking that they, in fact, understood what they had just been through in the last module. And if they didn't, they could go back and do it as many times as they wanted to. It was a self-serving exercise for the learner so that they could double check and be confident within themselves that they actually did understand the content. So it wasn't necessary to save any scores, but yes, it is possible to do so.
Thank you. And the other question from Alma Riza Balan. What is the standard resolution size of pictures for PowerPoint?
I don't know that there is a standard, but I would say to you sort of 1024 by 768 would be or more would be fine, but 1024 by 768 should be okay. Because even if you go to a monitor that's full screen and bigger, you're never going to be quite full screen because you're going to be playing within a player. You've got some header information and so on. So as a rule of thumb, that should be okay. I wouldn't go smaller than that because if you expand to a monitor that's bigger, your images will become a little pixelated, which is not a good thing.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, Rachel is asking, does Speech Hello have a cost? Do you know?
Yes, it does. It does have a cost, and I actually cannot remember, but I think it was about $30 or $40 for the entry level. I did upgrade to Pro, which to get some of the Pro voices, which was a little bit more, but all in all, I mean, you would have paid double that just for one professional voiceover. And the thing that's nice about it is, of course, you can edit it and change it and so on as much as you like. So, look, it's not ideal. A human voice is always better, but I found that this was so good and so close to a human voice that it was acceptable to bring life to this particular series of tutorials or lessons.
Yeah, I think that this is the time to wrap up our session.
Fantastic, thank you.
I would like to thank you, David, for such a great presentation and willingness to share your experience with us. And thank you all for coming to this webinar and spending this valuable hour with us. So I hope everyone will have a wonderful day and see you at the next webinar.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.